Hello, hello. Good morning.
Hello, hello. Good morning, and welcome to another Adventures in Truth podcast. It's a fantastic Wednesday morning, and I'm here with my podcast and partner, Jeff Smith. Dr. Jeff, how are you?
I am well, Jim. And how are you this morning?
I'm doing well. It's interesting spring weather days happening here, being hot and rainy and weird, and but we're all stuck at home anyway, so it's all good. Actually doing all right with all that too. So, but welcome everybody out there in LIVECAST land to Adventures in Truth podcast. Jeff and I have been at this for a little over 2 years. Our show is, if you're not familiar with us, our show is all about diving into the things, the truths that we hold as a part of our common experience, and sort of dissecting them and helping to create a new perspective about many of them that don't serve, and also helping to those dives into truth to help kind of release those underpinnings of fear that many of us have carried through our lives, due to living as a human being on the planet. So gives us a little opportunity to help create a foundation for people to create transformation in their own experience. And we love doing it, and we're excited to be here. So thank you all out there who are here for being with us. And Jeff, anything from you already this morning?
Just would love to remind our viewers and listeners that we firmly believe that truth and love are somewhat synonymous, but let's go with the word truth here. Truth is not something that can be told. We cannot tell you what the truth is. It's something that has to be learned, and we learn that through our experiences. And what we're doing in this show is sharing our experiences that have led to what we believe is true. So love for you to join us as well to share some of your experiences about what you've learned about what truth is and what truth isn't.
Very cool. So we wanted to start today. The topic of today is mastering reframing, and this is a carryover from what we started last Wednesday. So last Wednesday we got into a really deep conversation about change, and we started that conversation by looking at the definition of change, which for me had a kind of a profound effect, because the actual definition was a bit more than I had anticipated, with regard to how it so wonderfully applied to where we were going with the idea of change and talking about state shifts. So let's look at that definition one more time. And we'll put that up on the screen for you. The definition of change: to make a difference in the state or condition of a thing, or to substitute another change or condition. So what does that mean in the scheme of things? Well, we talk a lot about building that daily practice, but most importantly, being able to shift state, being able to go from a state of fear into a state of opportunity, which is a state change, which is also change when you think about it. But what I love about the definition is that it speaks to our evolution pretty radically, in that it just simply states that by changing state, you're creating change. By changing your vibration, you're creating change. So everything we're doing in some form or fashion is creating change. So why all the fuss? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it violates the law of homeostasis, is why all the fuss. We are creatures of habit. We love anti-change. We want change. We beg for change, but at the same time, we've gotten used to what is that we call our normal, and our normal can be highly, highly dysfunctional, but yet it's still our normal. And so we habituate habits, we create habits, we call that habituation, to the point where we know we can do this, even if this is prisoner of war circumstances, or solitary confinement, or domestic violence, or drug addiction, or any of the other amazing, amazing circumstances that people find themselves in this life that we would call hardship, or chaos, or horror, or whatever you may want to call it. That becomes a person's normal. And change requires us to almost throw away everything. We kind of think of it as, oh my gosh, I invested so much time and energy and resources to learn how to do this. And I'm doing it and I'm surviving. I may have a limp. I may only have one eye now or whatever, but I'm doing this and I don't know how to do that. And it's that process in between this and that we would call change. I can recall on my therapist's office wall a sign, Dr. Don Campbell, great guy, that I got to spend hours and hours and hours in his office going through the process of learning to become a therapist. You have to go through therapy yourself, kind of makes sense. And Don had a sign on his wall that said, "Change is good. You go first." And I'll never forget that. It cracked me up every time I saw that sign, because again, we're there for change. We're there for the process of, please teach me how to change. Please teach me how to grow. But yet we kind of are resistant to it because we've already mastered where we are. And it's like, oh, I got to play the role of the novice again to learn how to do what's next. So a few musings about what change is and why we're resistant to it.
Well, it's a good segue to why are we focusing today on reframing? What is this thing reframing, and what is it about? And as you were talking, I was thinking in terms of butterflies, and which is not rainbows and unicorns, but in terms of the transformational process, and the change really allows us to shed where we've been to be where we are. One of the definitions of transformation that I love is to transcend and include. So transformation is never about leaving anything behind. It's never about you can't ever do X, Y, or Z. Transformation is about transcending the current vibration and including it in your experience, because it sets the foundation for where you're going to go from here. So reframing, and in the context of that, what is it? Well, reframing is this idea of, I have to change my focus when I change my vibration. I have to change where I'm attending to things when I change my vibration. And so what does that mean? Well, so much happens in the course of change, and particularly larger change. But if you look at any form of change, there's this process that we go through. But when we step into that new energy, we're going to get into this more later in the show, but there's this area of space called not know. You're going into a new vibration, meaning it's new to you, it's new to your experience potentially. So the reframing aspect is about being able to refocus and reharness your consciousness in a way that doesn't constantly take you into history. One of the things that I learned years ago working with clients is, and I'm sure, Jeff, you probably have the same experience, is that our tendency as humans is when we're confronted to change, we want to look in history for the meaning and understanding of that change. And it's really interestingly antithetical to the idea of change, because change is not about what was, change is about where we are and where we're going. And so looking to history to make sense of that doesn't make sense, because then you're dragging all the old baggage into the new experience. And that's where reframing comes in. This is where we focus our attention to where we want to be and what we want to do, how we want to feel, what we want to experience. Not so much the hows, but what is this experience that I'm stepping into? Any thoughts on that, Sir Jeff?
Yes. Sometimes the mind of Jeff works like this. The word reframing, when that first comes to my mind, I think of a piece of artwork that has a frame around it. And you've been looking at this piece of artwork for a really long time going, I wonder what this picture would look like, or this painting would look like with a different frame around it. And people that paint will tell you that they think the painting is far more significant than the frame. And people that design frames will tell you that the frame makes the painting. And true art connoisseurs will tell you the answer is C. It takes both. And, even the width of the frame, the gaudiness of the frame, or the plainness of the frame, or even the matting that goes between the frame and the picture, they're all delicately interconnected and important to the overall perception and appreciation of the piece of art. So what our podcast is largely about today is Are we willing to take the frame of our life off the picture that we've painted so far, metaphorically? And are we willing to go into the craft room and build a new frame that we can see ourselves through? And that will not be for the rest of our life. We're likely going to reframe and reframe and reframe and reframe our lives many, many, many times. One of my mentors that I hope to one day meet, you may say, well, how can you have a mentor if you've never met him? Well, I've read all of his books. I've watched a lot of videos. I'm talking about Greg Braden. He talks about, in this modern era that we live in, someone that incarnates into a human body in this time in human history has the opportunity to accomplish what could only be accomplished in one lifetime. We can now get as much done in 4 lifetimes in one. So that would literally be 4 different frames. And that would basically be you evolving through your belief systems of what do you believe about truth and reality and the universe today that is different from what you believed a decade ago or 2 decades ago. And how will that change over time? And a lot of psychological developmental sorts of works will say that, you know, there's a huge change around age 20, another big change around age 35, then in your mid 50s, and then around 70. So those are kind of like the 4 big hallmarks of different perceptions about what's important and what priorities people have to focus on. That was a lot of detail to get into an introduction to what reframing is, but we're really putting a different frame. We're building a different frame to see our life through.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Antiques Roadshow, and I know for a fact that most paintings, if they get docked, it's going to be because the frame is not right with the picture. It's not going to be, you know, if they bring in these beautiful pictures, but the frame isn't the original frame, or it was a frame that they put on later. If they can see it, it changes the value of the painting. Sometimes dramatically, but I love the analogy. It works beautifully for this purpose. So here you are in the throes of change, and you're saying, okay, so what is this reframing thing, and what does this mean? What am I reframing? Well, when you step into a new, think of it in terms of energy again. Okay, that's not my thing here. Is here you are in this field of energy, and say your wavelength is, you know, whatever your frequency is at a certain level that you feel somewhat uncomfortable with because you feel like you need to move or grow or change. So you want to take that leap. So you allow the unfolding that you experience in your life, the incidences, the things that are occurring around you, begin to inform that change, and you begin to step into it because now you're inspired because you've been focusing through your daily practice to create these powerful shifts in your experience. So you make this shift, and in the context of this shift, you now kind of discombobulated. You may kind of feel like, gosh, what did I do? And is this really the right move? And am I in the right place? And is this feeling right? And I'm not sure. And all of the insecurity that comes when you go into the place of not know. And these are some of the key elements that we're going to get into about reframing. One of those is not knowing. I've sort of jumped ahead of myself a little bit, not realizing in the context of the conversation how this would come up, but we'll get there. So in these elements of reframing, you're really looking to focus your entire being on where you're going. So you may not have a destination in mind yet. You may not even know what the end result is yet, but you know what you want to feel. So if you're having this major change in the context of a relationship, and things are in whatever state they're in, and you're looking to create change, so you start to focus your energy and awareness on where how you want to feel, and then you begin to move into that, and you begin to, through your daily practice, instigate that experience in your world and begin to flesh it out. Because in the context of coming into a new vibration, you don't necessarily know what this is all about. Is this the right place for you? Is this the right vibration you want to be? You may need to go a little higher, a little lower. You got to be with it, and part of that is being able to reframe your experience by not going backwards, by not looking for things in the past to make you feel better, but by stepping forward into this new experience and giving yourself permission and allowing for something new and different to unfold for you. That is the biggest challenge in reframing, and the biggest challenge of change is when we say embrace change, it's more about embrace the reframing, because change is a process and you may not know where you're going to end up until you're there, but that's part of the journey. So is that making sense?
Absolutely.
So that we're understanding that reframing is, I've made the change, I've chosen to make the change. So part of reframing becomes about responsibility for self. I'm making this change because I know it's going to improve my energy, my circumstance, my belief, my idea, whatever it is. You don't normally do things for any other reason than you think you will feel better for doing it. So lean into that and let that be the support of how you feel as you go into this reframing process. Sometimes it also, I find it helps to have someone that you know and love, or someone you respect, who can help you with that reframing, because sometimes you can get buried in the details. And we don't want to see that happening. So, all right. So looking at that first key element, focus on where you're going, not where you've been. I think that's true of anything. Wouldn't you say, Jeff? Pretty much, you don't want to spend a lot of energy looking backwards.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
So when we focus on where we're going, we're focusing again on maybe it's about how it feels, and maybe you have a specific destination, but be mindful of the refocus is not about how you're going to get there. And that's really important. It has nothing to do with the how. It has to do with creating the energetic space for you to fill the space that you're now seeking to become. I don't know if I made that sounded like a good one.
Yeah. The bullet you have up on the screen there, focus on where you're going, not where you've been. I'm thinking about, somebody that's created a scenario for themselves. They've gotten to a certain point in life. Chances are they're not traveling very far away from that point. So I'm wondering if it's more about where you are rather than where you've been. That you've gotten here, and you know that you can do this, whatever this is, because you're doing it. But you're aware that you don't want to keep doing this. That there's more. There's more joy, peace, harmony, tranquility, and sometimes that can actually be through less stuff, through less commitment, through less obligation, through less challenge. So I think what we're really talking about here is, what do you want? What do you actually want? Are you brave and bold enough that you'd hit the pause button in your life and you would develop a meditative practice so that you could actually tell people what you want, that you know what you want, meaning what experiences do you want to create and be able to have and enjoy on a moment by moment basis, hour by hour, day by day, week by week, month by month. Some things we want are bucket list items, others are lifestyle, others are type of relationships. But knowing what you want is step two. Step number one to me would be, who are you? Actually taking the time to know, who the heck am I? And we spend our whole lives really trying to figure that out. If we don't spend time figuring out who we are, we really won't know what we want. And we'll spend a lot of time in an unhappy, unsatisfied place, always feeling like there's something more, there's something missing. Those are not bad places to be if you're willing to do the work to create the change that's necessary that you want to step into.
Yeah. And that's the key, really, is recognizing that you're stepping into change. I know sometimes people get freaked out because they feel like they're quote unquote forced into change. The circumstances show up in their life in a way that they're forced to confront something or deal with something. And what I would say to that is, yes, that does happen, but that happens as a result of your inattention prior to that showing up. So I want to say that again so that you really understand where this is coming from. That when change shows up in a radical fashion, usually in a way that is abrupt, it's usually because we haven't been paying attention previously to where our thoughts and our emotions are and how we're feeling and what we want to create. So the larger part of us, again, in my experience, our desire is there. Our stuckness is also there. And that larger part of us, the soul, the connection to God, the spark, whatever, holds that space continually for us for change and evolution and growth. And so it's constantly pulling us forward into that energy, into that desire to expand, this idea that the chest opens. When I talk about it, I can feel that stretch that wants to open up and expand because it's just a natural part of who we are. So when you're stuck in that ego resistance, or when you're stuck in that place of resistance, you're fighting against the nature of who you are. So the reframing process is more of a kind of it's an important part, but it's more kind of a trick to kind of not get yourself stuck in focusing on what has not served you, because you're already in the process of change. It's already occurring. So the amount of energy, again, we've talked about this before too, to shut it down takes a lot of energy and a lot of resistance, and that causes a lot of not good things to happen in our world when it's that intense. So reframing, again, gives us the place and the space to appreciate and to be a part of this evolution of change because I'm calling for it. That's the thing that you got to remember. You're calling for it. You may not like how it shows up, but that could be in part because of being sloppy about how you're creating. Could be in part because you're being sloppy about paying attention to what's really happening in your experience. And what we want to encourage you to do is to get conscious, to Jeff's point. That daily practice, that meditation, that focus on self is so, so important. So part of this second page, the second piece of this element of reframing, I want to call it creating a new story. And I was hesitant to use this language because stories are what have created much of our issues, as we sit in our lives at whatever stage to look at beliefs and look at areas that we want to create change in. Many of the stories that we have created is how we ended up where we are in whatever degree of resistance or alignment we're in. But one of the ways that you can really radically alter that is that this new story be based in appreciation, meaning that your focus, again, the reframe, the focus is in, I am so appreciating this new experience I'm creating. I may not completely understand it yet, but I love how it feels. I love the excitement that I'm feeling about this new evolution that I'm experiencing and how it feels in my body. And sometimes I feel a little confused by it. But if I breathe, if I find my center, if I get into my zone, if I get into that space that I've created and built the foundation for, now I can start to really taste the juices of this change, and I can get really dialed in and creating that appreciation cycle that just gets your energy juiced. And I'm hoping that as I'm talking, that y'all are experiencing that juice. That juice is so easy to squeeze from the fruit of the change that you're looking for, because all it requires is a simple change in perspective, a simple reframing of your experience to say, wow, I'm embarking on an amazing new adventure, and I know I have the tools to do it. I know I have the ability. I know I have the willingness, and I know there are things that I'm going to have to shift. I'm going to have to look at. I'm going to have to deal with, and that's okay, because none of it is bad and wrong. It's just choices I made based on what I knew from where I was with what I had when I had it. And now it's changed, and now it's different. Now I can make different choices. And how exciting is that? So right. I'm just using my own energy right here, right now, in this dialogue for you guys to feel how easy it is to just go to appreciation. You don't even have to think that hard. I remember when I first started working in appreciation, it was so awkward. Because you're like, especially you're by yourself and you're like, okay, well, I appreciate today. I appreciate that my car worked. I appreciate that, and we start small, and that's where you got to start. Maybe that's where you do start, and you start building it until you feel it, and then you keep doing it, and you feel it more, and you feel it more, and then all of a sudden you find your zone, and then you're there, and you can take off from there. So appreciation, huge. Anything before we carry on here? I'm going to take a look at comments. We got people commenting.
Yes, I'd like to have a comment in here regarding you mentioned the metamorphic process of the butterfly earlier in our podcast this morning. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to be the caterpillar for a moment, wondering if a caterpillar even has the consciousness of what it is going to become. And if it's ever had the ability to look up and notice a butterfly flying going, oh, that's going to be me next month, or that's going to be me at some point in my future. I don't know that caterpillars have the ability to do that, but I do know that we do, that we have the ability to be able to see and know what we can become in the way that we are showing appreciation and writing our story. But one of the things I think we could all agree on is a caterpillar, if you asked it, how do you become a butterfly? It would say, I have no freaking idea. I have no idea how that actually happens. And the reason I'm so willing to believe that a caterpillar does not know how that happens is because our best science doesn't know how that happens. You've heard, if you're a longtime listener to our work, you've heard me reference before that our best science describes the metamorphic process of a butterfly is becoming magic ooze. A caterpillar liquefies itself in its chrysalis, and it molecularly reorganizes itself from what it was to what it's going to become by going through a liquefaction process. And our science does not understand how that works, so they call it magic ooze. So how I'd like to draw a parallel between that process and our process of change is you don't have to know how the metamorphosis is going to take place. You just have to know that that's what we're here to do. And if you're willing to, at some point, realize, I've been a caterpillar long enough, and I have eaten enough leaves, and I have enough, whatever it takes for that metamorphosis process to be completed, I got to find a place to now create a chrysalis. And I don't even know why I'm doing this, but I'm doing it. I found a leaf, I found a safe place, I've created an attachment point. I'm now spinning my cocoon, and I'm going to hang out in here for a while. So that's what the change process requires, is you attach to something that you believe is going to create the safety for you to go through that metamorphic change process. And then it just happens. You hang out, you somehow slip into some state of altered consciousness, and then sometime later you emerge as this, oh my gosh, I kind of recognize where I am, maybe because I attached myself here, but I've got these wings now. I've got these legs now. I don't know what to do with them yet, but I'm going to start playing around with this and see what happens. So just imagine, as you're creating change in your life, that we could do it the same way that a butterfly does, in that there are stages and there are experiences along the way that we're going to have, but you don't have to actually know how the change process happens, but it happens step by step, moment by moment. We just have to do our part to bring that forward.
To allow. Yeah, I was reflecting a lot as you were talking. The other thing that you didn't talk about that I think is equally as important, and if I'm completely crazy, then I'll go there. But the other thing about the caterpillar is compelled, just as we are. The caterpillar, it is not. I do not have an experience the caterpillars live to an old age. I don't have any experience of caterpillars other than being stepped on, eaten by birds, or turning into butterflies. So there is no place that I understand it, and I'm open to being corrected on this, but there's no place that in my understanding, where the caterpillar has any other thing going on other than its evolution to becoming a butterfly, whatever that looks like. There is no other thing. The only difference, I mean, physiologically we're different, obviously. Our rational, our ability to think and to rationalize and things like that is probably different. We don't know that for a fact. We assume that because they don't have language and things. But when it comes down to it, we are of the same ilk. We are of the same beingness, that we are called, we are compelled, we are pulled. Why do we go to religion? Why do we go to spirituality? Why do we look for more? Because we're compelled. We know it exists. We know it's there. We know we want to be a part of it. And in some form or fashion, we're moving toward that in the best way we know how. And so, again, I love the butterfly. It seems to be a never-ending source of wonderful information. But it's just so extraordinary to me, the more parallels you can draw from all of the things that are reflected to us in our world about who and what we are. And that they can demonstrate for us, like the butterfly does, You go about your business, you eat your leaves, you climb trees, you do whatever you do. You don't sweat it. You just, you try to stay safe as best you can. And then you feel this pull. So as Jeff said, I don't need to go through it again. And so the process continues and the evolution continues.
Yeah.
Consider that in your own experience.
There's another piece to this that our listeners may find interesting, in that, as you were talking about, there most likely is no such thing as an old caterpillar that dies as a caterpillar because it chose not to metamorphosize into a butterfly. But and you talked about getting stepped on or eaten by a bird, or becoming a butterfly. And even after becoming a butterfly, it could get eaten by a bird right away too, and having actually never even taken flight. And what we don't know, it's all theory and conjecture, is that butterfly would likely get to be a caterpillar again, to become a butterfly again, so that it could actually fly and have that experience. But no butterfly shows up on the planet as a butterfly. You have to be a caterpillar first in order to become a butterfly. And that's the hard part. Imagine if you were in butterfly heaven and you were just getting ready to fly for your first flight, and a big sparrow comes down and gobbles you up, and like, oh my gosh, I went through all that work to be a caterpillar and crawled around and avoided this and evaded that. And, I got to be a butterfly for 40 seconds before I got gobbled up. Now, if I really want to have that experience of flying, I got to go be a freaking caterpillar again. Oh, I can't do that. And the other butterflies in butterfly heaven would say, sure you can. You did it once. You can do it again. It's no big deal. Go down there. Be willing to be stepped on. Be willing to be gobbled up. But you're going to get to fly and be a butterfly for a day, even, a day. And doggone it, the doggone things migrate from the Rockies to the West Coast, annually. It's amazing what this little tiny fragile creature is actually capable of doing.
Yeah.
And it just does it.
Absolutely amazing and extraordinary stuff. So again, taking that appreciation to a new level. This appreciation is a tool that you can immediately add to your daily practice. You can immediately add it to any part of your life. When I was still living in San Francisco, when I was still living in San Diego, when I first, there was a point where I was trying to, literally was being conscious of, I need to shift where what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is not what I want to be doing. And so I started doing appreciation. I would do it on my drive to work, and I would do it on my way home from work every day. And it was clunky and weird and awkward at first, but it came along. And the great thing about it is it doesn't matter, because you're by yourself mostly. So when you're doing it, sound stupid, talk out loud, let yourself hear yourself. That's the relationship you're starting to build. If you can't listen to your own voice, that's a problem, people. You got to be able to engage with who you are and find ways to appreciate all of it, because that's what's going to get you to that caterpillar. That's going to take that caterpillar to the butterfly. There's something too, and maybe this is another show, Jeff, but this idea of this compulsion, this pull, this draw to transformation and change, really, really strikes me. And I want to dive into that, but I'm afraid if we go there now, we're going to go down a rabbit hole and not come out for a while. Because I love that the energy of that just feels amazing. So again, we're talking about elements of reframing, the ability to step into change and then to shift your focus in such a way that all of your energy is creating momentum toward the change you're desiring. So all your thought, all of your emotion, you can observe the things that show up that don't serve that purpose. You don't have to engage them. You can observe them and see if they're even worth your time or energy. Think again about the caterpillar. Caterpillar's, making its way along, and then maybe it's climbing up the tree and it encounters some ants, and it has to decide in that moment, is this anything? Is this anything I got to pay attention to or not? Maybe not so much. Goes a little further, notices the notch in the tree, has an experience of notch in tree means bird. Bird means I might get eaten. So the caterpillar has to make a choice and makes an adjustment to the path that it's taking maybe. But it continues on its journey. So continue and appreciate that you're on that journey and growing through that journey. So again, some more elements of reframing. So we want to take this now down to the brass tacks. How do we anchor this? So change is happening. I'm in this place of not know. I'm kind of, did I skip one somewhere? Where's that next? let's go back to the not know piece, and then we'll go to the next one. So, talking about aspect of learning the joy of not know, and we've talked about this pretty frequently, and I think the butterfly reference is a good one for this. Not know is the space I call when you shift from a vibration of understanding to a vibration of I don't understand anymore. And I'm being funny, but it's a process of what I have used before. The tools that I have used may not be as functional, may not be as effective, but I know this change is useful and necessary, so I'm stepping in. And now the tools that I were using aren't as useful or effective, and now I'm kind of freaking out. And this is the place where we want to stop and go, oh God, what did I do before when this happened? Look back. Let's change that. Let's say, okay, recognize, okay, those tools served a different vibration. What tools can I use now to create and sustain and build on the vibration that I want, that I'm focusing on? So the space of not know requires that you just be in this new energy for a while, because you don't have any experience with it. You got to kind of feel your way into it. You got to see, where does it sit with me? Where is it in my body? Is there resistance anywhere? Am I comfortable in this new energy? Is it exciting me, or is it sucking my energy? Where am I at in this process? So that's what the not know space is about. And the joy of the not know space, to me, is you get to discover more of you without context to history. Did that make sense, guys? Did you get that? You get to explore more of who you are without history. You get to experience you in the space of not know, and get to make more choices, which promotes more change, which promotes more. Do you see where I'm going with that?
What it makes me think of, Jim, is if you deny the impulse to live in history, to live in the past, because your past got you to where you are. So you have a path, you have all these experiences. But if you're looking back, you're not going to be present. So not knowing is really about being in the moment, truly, truly being present. And knowing, you're going to know what to do when it's time to do something. And Byron Katie said that you'll always be able to do one of these three things. You'll either stay seated or laying down, if you already are seated or laying down. You'll continue standing if you're standing. You might walk or you might run. But those are the only 5 things you'll ever have to decide to do. If there's ever a time in your life where you don't know what to do, you'll be doing one of those 5 things. And you'll either keep doing one of those 5 things, or you'll switch to one of the other 4 options in that moment. So there will never, ever be a time in your life where you won't know what to do, because you'll be able to do that. And then, of course, you can build on that philosophy much, much greater depth than those 5 things, but there'll always be at least those 5 things. But I do like the idea of being willing to be in a place where it's okay to not know, because you're being present and you're trusting the wisdom that will be available to you, that you can tap into and draw from to know what to do. There's actually a really beautiful word for this process. It's called noetics. And just love to say that, as it just flows off the tongue so eloquently. But there's also another word called noesis. And it's a knowing that incorporates our intuitive abilities, our psychic abilities, any kind of ability we have to tune in to God or the universe in accessing information at will and on demand, as well as all of our repository of the library of all of our experiences. So there's many ways to be able to know something. For me, the best place to be is, let me draw on any of those options in the moment, as I will know what to do in that moment.
I want to share a story occurred back when in 2012 when I was designing and building my center in San Diego. I was working with the general contractor who was helping me do the redesign of the studio, and I had a download about what I wanted it to look like and what it was, the dimensions and everything. I literally got up one morning and drew it out, and it all measured and all was good. And part of this thing was I wanted to have some windows in the front wall so that the space didn't feel like chunky. It wasn't just rooms, but there was a flow of energy between the spaces anyway. So I had it in my mind, and in the design, I had these windows framed and on either side of, and actually I think there was, in the original design, there were 2 or 3 of them per side. And I was driving up to 15, and I was going up to Escondido, I think, and I got a call from the general contractor, and he said, "Listen, I can get you the glass, but it's this size, and it'll only fit 1 panel." And I started freaking out. I was like, "Oh my God, that's not the vision. The vision was 3 panels per side, and oh my God, I don't know what to do with this." And he can get the glass now, and I'm not ready, and I'm not prepared, and I'm freaking out. And so and what do I do in the midst of that? Is I stop and I go, okay, because bear in mind, just so you have some background here, this is me opening a business by myself. I'd never done it before. I was in process. A lot of extraordinary things came together for this to happen. So I'm a little freaked out that my vision is not unfolding as I think vision should unfold, which is what I already did. So we're talking, and he's telling me about this, and I said, "Look, give me a minute. I gotta process. So let me call you back in a few minutes and settle myself down." So I hung up the phone and I start breathing, and I start thinking about the project, and I start thinking as I'm breathing, my mind is doing the math, and the math of the wall. The wall is so many feet wide, it's so many feet tall. There's a door in the middle of it, so there's only so much room on either side of this door. I'm not a contractor. I don't do construction. I'm just a guy who had an idea. So I'm sitting there processing this, and I hear in my head, "Jim, do the math. Jim, do the math." What do you mean, do the math? And I see the pictures of this wall. Do the math. What's the dimensions of the wall? Dimensions are here. How big is the door? The door is 3 feet by 6 feet. Okay. How much wall space is left? So many feet. Oh my God, I don't have enough room for 3 panes of glass. Those glass that you got are absolutely perfect. They're going to fit beautifully because the wall has to have enough wall to support this big piece of glass that's going to be in it, which I never thought of before. So 5 minutes later, I'm calling him back going, "Get the glass, we're good to go." And in the course of 5 minutes, I went from high anxiety and about change, high anxiety about what wasn't working, to finding a quiet place, getting into not know because I'm in something I don't have experience with, getting as quiet as I can, and I'm driving. So I'm breathing and I'm driving and I'm breathing and I'm driving, and I'm settling in, and I'm like, okay, what don't I know here? There's things that I can know that will help me solve this problem. What is it? And I hear in my head, do the math. And the math led me to the answer to the question in a short period of time that enabled me to create change and enabled me to move on with very little resistance. So I use that story because I wanted to tie it to an example that people could understand in everyday life about how do you find the space? Where do you go? What do you do? The first thing you do is you breathe, and you breathe into that center that you've created through your daily practice, and you find that place of centeredness so that you can begin to call on that energy that Jeff talks about, that connecting to universal energy and being able to tap into things that you don't normally have access to or don't think you have access to until you stop and get centered and clear. And I hope that example kind of brings to light what we're talking about here in the context of change, that when you believe it's all working in your favor, when you believe and know that the steps that you are taking are moving you to where you want to go, that getting quiet piece is not about the hows, it's about allowing the how to unfold without you messing with it. So the general contractor showed up to me and said, "I have a solution to this situation." That wasn't a problem to begin with in my mind because I had already solved it, except I hadn't because I didn't know enough about engineering to know that the wall would fall over if they put 3 panes of glass in it. So again, being willing to allow for that space, not fighting it. Sure, there was some resistance initially. My vision, I had a freaking vision, and my vision isn't coming to where I wanted it to. And I'll have you know, guys, at the end result was fantastic. It was better than I originally thought of when I originally thought of it, or when the download. So again, trust the process. So I hope I didn't go too far afield there.
When you say I had a vision, what I hear when I hear people say statements like that is, I always want to know what what part of you is the I that you're referring to when you say I had a vision? and it would be the ego had a vision, and it's really attached to that vision, and it's limited to that vision being the solution, where spirit and soul, on the other hand, know that there are infinite opportunities and infinite ways that that vision can unfold. And the most important aspect, perhaps, in that experience you were sharing is the right light, or the right ambiance, or the right expression of light in the windows, of which soul and spirit can capture that vision and have it be even more accurate than what ego can do by itself.
True that. I like that a lot. So we're going to move as the last part of this, the elements of reframing. So how do you anchor your new experiences? What are you incorporating into your daily practice to integrate this new energy? So here you are in change. You're in not know. It's all kind of mushy. They'll call it mushy. It's still in formation. You're still generating your thoughts and emotions about this change. You're still stepping into the new vibration of the change. As you're doing that, how are you anchoring? Because anchoring means the natural tendency, again, in my experience from the human experience, is that we want to find a way to anchor into this reality because we live in a time-space reality. So when changes occur, one of the early stages is, how do I anchor this? How do I feel grounded in this new experience? How do I feel stable in this new experience? And how that happens is through what you incorporate into the things that we've talked about before, how you set up that daily practice. So your reframing is giving you the perspective so that you're focused in. You may have a lot of not know going on. You may have a lot of, I don't know where this is going, but you're clear in your energy and the direction that you're going. You know this change is happening, and you're engaged, and you're allowing, and you're letting that happen. So what happens over time now is that you want to find ways to kind of, anchor is the best word I know how. I don't know if you have another word that sounds better, Jeff, or more contextual.
Attachment. Anchoring is a form of attaching.
Yeah. So the anchoring, and again, I'm not looking for a way to lock you into staying somewhere. It's more about being able to ground the energy in your experience, because when you take on a new vibration, it's very intense. It can be very heady. It can be very discombobulating. So you're in a time-space environment. You're a human being on the earth. So let's look for things to help anchor the experience so that you're anchoring it into new fertile ground, not old used ground. Again, going back to that comment from before, it is typically the experience of human beings to look back for significance or understanding. And what we're saying is, no, build it into your practice. Build this new understanding into your practice. So that it becomes the foundation for what you create the next leap in change from. If you're following along on that analogy. So I'm jumping around a little bit here. So how do we anchor this new experience? So meditation is one way, yoga is another way. Any way that you can allow the energy to flow freely through your body and through your energy system, and let it move around whatever resistance it may be encountering. Again, you don't have to engage every piece of resistance. You can simply notice that it's there and change your focus. Reframe yourself to where you're going, not where you've been. Any thoughts on other anchoring ways to anchor the experience, Jeff? In your experience, how do you bring it home so that it even, I'm trying to think in the butterfly analogy, if there's a way to have that make sense.
Well, what I like about this statement that you're making and offering for us to consider is what we're doing right now is getting into the how stuff. And we were talking earlier in our podcast that the how is actually the least important part of making change and reframing. The most important part is why. Why am I doing this? And there are so many ways for the how. There are infinite ways for how. What I would tell somebody about the very best diet plan for them or the very best workout plan for them is the one that they will do. So don't try to do it my way or Jim's way. You have to find a way that you will actually do it. Because if I tell you my way and you're going to run into resistance and then you'll stop because my way won't work for you. So I don't want to get into the how. I would like to leave people with this idea that how is the easiest part. Do not let resistance take hold in your life because you're getting stuck on the how. Go back to the why do I want to reframe. I want to reframe because I'm in pain. I'm bored. I know that there's more for me to experience here on this planet. I'm not satisfied. I'm still in caterpillar land and I want to get to butterfly land. I want to have butterfly experiences and I'm not having those. You will never have those as a caterpillar unless two giant butterflies come and pick you up and take you for a little ride and drop you off, which, they've made movies about things like that. But that would only make the caterpillar hopefully even want to have that experience even more. I don't know if caterpillars dream about being butterflies. That might be another thing to explore. If you want some how possibilities, is look at your dreams. Bring this whole concept before you fall asleep at night into your conscious awareness, saying, I want to explore creating and reframing change in my life through my dreams that I'm having. Let your dreams be your role plays and your dress rehearsals to how you want to wake up in the morning. And that you'll have the fresh energy and the fresh perspective and the fresh drive and compulsion to begin to step into the new reframe or the new changes that you want to incorporate into your life. It's always why, though. Why is the question to answer before you get into the how. Why do I want this?
Excellent point. And I where that leads me is to say I would encourage you, all of you guys out there, to consider reframing before you ever consider how to do anything. Let the how be inspired through your reframing, through your focus. That's the whole idea of inspired action. It's the whole idea behind Be Do Have, is that you find that beingness, you find that space of clarity or change that you're looking to encompass, and then you reframe your focus so that you're moving toward the thing you want. And out of that, you're inspired to do things that help bring that vision to life. Those are where the doing things happen. And even the doing thing has nothing to do with how. It has to do with following the inspiration. So this is really, 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 really great conversation. And already the hour has blown by. Really dig in this idea of reframing and particularly to lay a foundation for you all out there to really create a power foundation for your change and transformation, whatever that may be. It doesn't matter the size of the change. It doesn't matter the quantumness, as it were, of the change. That all sounds good on paper. But it's the changes that create radical shift in our consciousness and our life that really matter, I think. There's lots of things, but I think they all do that. I think all change has that impact if you allow it. If you spend your day fussing in change and fighting change, then you're going to learn the experience of resistance until you're ready to not learn that anymore. And then when you're ready to surrender that resistance, you can move into reframing, because you're now no longer fighting where you're going, you're creating it, which is how it was meant to be to begin with. So jump on the train and enjoy the ride. Yeah. Do you have anything you'd like to say in closing in our last minute together today?
Yeah, I'd like to end with a metaphor that the idea of reframing would be that you are the canvas, you are the painting, you are the artwork that you have created. We call that your story. And that the story is never finished. The artwork is a project always under construction. But from time to time, it's interesting, perhaps, if you change the light of your painting. That would be a form of reframing, is changing the light around the painting. You put a different color frame around it. You hang the painting on a different wall. You look at it in the morning with full sun. You look at it in the evening with partial sun. You're going to see yourself differently. This is really what we're talking about. A reframe is the willingness to see yourself differently, so that you can more fully know and understand who you are and why you're here, what you're supposed to do. And there's no greater satisfaction than knowing the answers or getting more clues to complete that question of who am I, why am I here, what am I supposed to be doing? And we can get glimpses of that through this practice of reframing.
Excellent. We do have a little bit of time. If you all out there have any questions or want to make a comment, thank you for the comments and involvement throughout the show. We appreciate you very much. Super happy to be here to share some more good stuff. We'll see you again on Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific. No, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time for our next live cast, which we will be, I believe, focusing on journeys again. So we'll be continuing the evolution of that conversation and some recent experiences, which we're looking forward to talking about. And thank you all for being a part of our show today. We appreciate you so much. Please like us, please subscribe, share with us, share our pages, let people know we're out here. Really wanting to create a powerful foundation for people to create powerful change for themselves. So thanks for joining Awake Ventures in Truth, and we will see you all very soon.
So long, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.